Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This was going to be just an upload of the live viewing of the Rainbow Seven versus Infinity Esports game that I did last night. But the fact that the game didn't start till 11 meant that by the third game of the series, I was basically asleep. And so the analysis became really bad, and it was not great to start off with anyway. I feel like everyone who watched the live view can probably tell you that. So instead, we're going to just talk about the drafts. We're not going to talk about lane matchups too much because I feel like that overcomplicates it, and we're going to keep it quite simple today. But we'll just talk about what they did, what they can do better, and just keep it really simple because teams, even at the highest levels, are making simple drafting mistakes. So why not make a video talking about their mistakes and the things they do well, also quite basic and quite simple. So we'll start with game one. Game one, the power picks mostly banned early on. You've got the LeBlanc, which most people seem to consider a power pick. You've got the Rel, you've got the Rumble, you've got the Cassante, you've got the Sejuani, which a lot of teams, especially in the minor regions, consider a crutch, banned out. So, and then you've got the priorities for both teams. You've got the Xayah. Normally, I wouldn't consider Xayah a good early pick, but Seal is pretty good on Xayah, so I think it's fair enough. And you'll see as we get further into the draft that it is perfectly wanted. And then you've got in Infinity, they pick up the Poppy early on, which I think is a decent pickup because she stops your opponents picking up a lot of, dashy champions. It doesn't really work because R7 just sort of ignore it and pick up the Rakan and the Aatrox, which theoretically the Poppy pick should sort of deny, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, if you think you're good enough, it's going to work anyway. And then you got the counter with the Aphelios, which I think is fine because you want to counter your enemies' picks. Like if you're on red side and you have counter pick, you always want to counter pick as the draft goes on if you can, because it means that you have the counter pick at the end of the draft, which is the whole strength of the red side. Whereas blue side is all about picking the power pick, because you have the first picks. If you understand what I mean. Obviously, blue, because of the way it works, blue side does get some counter picks and some power picks, but that's essentially how the draft's supposed to work out. So let's talk about these two drafts as a thing. R7, they have they can peel and they can go in. It's sort of a protect sort of comp where you've got the Aatrox and the Maokai who should be taking a lot of damage. You've got them plus Rakan who should be doing a lot of your engaging, a lot of your peeling, and then you've got the Xayah and the Azir who should be doing a lot of your team's damage. So their team is fairly simple. It's got a fairly simple win con. And then you look at the other side, in Infinity Esports. They're sort of reliant on the Croc for the engage and Relectin. They can do a lot. They can do some stuff also for the engage. They've got the hook on Fresh, but that's not a great engage in my opinion as a support player. And then you've got the whole ability set of the Syndra, which can sort of do that sort of thing as well. But the team as a whole is just sort of looking to buy time and allow space for the Aphelios and Syndra to do damage, as they're your main damage outputs, which sounds simple, but it can be a hard win con to play out, and in this situation as well, I would say it's a lot harder to play out because it's sort of a harder win con. It's sort of a harder way of achieving a very similar thing to Rainbow Seven. I don't think they've got as tanky a frontline, their engage isn't as reliable, they are probably a little bit weaker champions as well. I mean, Syndra and Aphelios I quite like, and the Xayah isn't exactly much stronger, but it feels a bit safer, and in this league Xayah has quite a high priority, so they also think that Xayah is probably a stronger comp. So that's sort of where we're going to go. And then game two. So in game two, Rainbow Seven go with similar bans. You've got the LeBlanc and Rel bans coming out again. This time they pick up the Tristana ban because in this series red side always banned Tristana because presumably they assumed the other team was going to pick it as first pick. But on the other side, you've got the fact that Infinity have banned a lot of different things. They've banned, because they're on the blue side, they get themselves the first pick, in which case they've swapped the ban of Sejuani for first pick Sejuani. They've picked up the Poppy ban because they don't want to play it anymore and they don't want to give it to the enemy side. They picked up the Xayah ban because Xayah was effective in the last game, and then they picked up the power pick ban of Kai'Sa, who has weirdly had zero presence in the previous game, despite being one of the strongest picks currently in the game. And you can sort of see that this reactionary like bans sort of happens throughout the series for Infinity. They sort of struggle to keep a general scheme, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. They sort of this time there is a more obvious win con for them. They sort of just scale and they protect their carries. Like their whole win con is basically getting to the Ornn items and then getting Zeri and Azir to do a lot of damage behind their very, very tanky trio of Sejuani, Ornn, and Nautilus. They also have more reliable engage because the Nautilus hook is more reliable than the Fresh hook. Ornn is very reliable. Ornn's kit in general is quite reliable for engage. Seju has got a decent kit for engage as well. So they've got a much better comp than the first game, in my opinion. And then on the other side, you've got Rainbow 7. They're a bit more of a flex comp. They've got 3 damage options in the Rumble, the Jace, and the Aphelios. It's also a bit more of a poke comp because I feel like that naturally happens when you've got the Jace. And then if you've got Green Gun Aphelios as well, you're doing a lot of poke damage. They're also quite good at peeling. Although I feel like this comp has quite a hard win con. Just because you need to keep all your carries alive to do reliable damage. You need to get in certain positions to do a lot of damage. They'd be very strong around chokes, but maybe not as strong in more open play. And you get a lot more open play fights, especially in this region, than you do in other leagues. But yeah, they've got a beefy front line. It's not a bad comp. But unlike the first game where I'd have gone with Rainbow 7's comp, this game I'd have probably gone for Infinity Esports comp because it's just ease of execution. And I think ease of execution is quite an important thing because when you're talking about trying to win a game, you want to put as little pressure on your innate ability to win you certain things because your innate ability isn't as reliable as the innate strength of the comp because the stats are guaranteed. Your ability to play isn't guaranteed. You could have a bad game. Someone can be better than you, things like that. Also, they've got CL off of his strongest pick, and they got 5 kid on one of his strongest picks as well. So that also plays into Infinity's schemes and makes their comp a lot stronger. Then we get into game 3. Rainbow 7, they copy their bans, except they move the Tristana, which is always banned on red side, for the Poppy pick. As you can see, consistent bans again. Despite losing the second game, they don't instantly react with a ban that they didn't see from the start, unlike Infinity. Infinity, again, they change their bans. They ban the Sejuani because they don't want their opponents to pick it. They ban the Trist because that's guaranteed on the red side. And then they still have the Xayah ban after the first game and the damage it did in that game. So the idea behind Rainbow 7's comp here is one of the nicest in this series, in my opinion, because they've got a front line which is relatively tanky in the Maokai, the Nautilus, and the Aatrox, one of the more tanky front lines you can have. They want to go in. They've got the Hook of Nautilus, which is reliable. They've got the Maokai ult, which sets up the hook, sets up the engage quite well. They've got the Aatrox who wants to go in. They do a lot of AoE damage, so if they can catch someone, if they can catch the opponents close together, they do a lot of damage because they got the AoE of Aatrox and the Xerath. They know they want to go in because they got the Kai'Sa who can press R and follow any engage from her teammates. And then it just leaves Xerath on his own to do damage from the distance and not get absolutely destroyed. And the reason why the Xerath pick works even better is so in a lot of times the Xerath isn't a good pick here because the Xerath can get flanked, but they know in this situation that the Xerath isn't going to get flanked because of the comp, because he's been picked on B5, is in the last pick of blue side, and they know that the comp so far from Infinity isn't set up for a flank pick, and they also know that they're going to have to pick something into Aatrox that Zoan is comfortable on, and that's not going to be necessarily something destined for the flanks. Jax has quite a low prio in this league, otherwise Jax might be a not bad pick. And then if we go into Infinity, their comp, it's not bad. It's a similar idea to their last comp where they've got the beefy front line this time of Ornn, Trundle and Braum, but this time it's a lot more focused around peel because Braum is just naturally more focused about peeling than Nautilus is, who they had in the last game. Trundle is decent at peeling. He's a bit better than Sejuani in my opinion for peeling. Not actually. I would rather have Sejuani in my team, but that's the point. And then Ornn is also decent peeling, decent engage. And then they've got the Azir and Zeri to do the damage again like they did last time. And Zeri is obviously a decent pickup because it's one of 5kid's better champions that he plays a lot, very, very often. But in this game, I would actually rather have the R7 comp because it's more interesting in the Xerath pickup. and the Aatrox pickup, but it's also got a more interesting style of win con that's fairly easy to execute. So I quite like the R7 comp. But in terms of who wins this draft, that's a bit more of a difficult question, and honestly, you could say either. So then we go on to Game 4. Game 4, R7 keep their relatively consistent bans. The Blanc ban, the Tourist ban on red side. They do pick up the Sejuani ban, presumably as a response to Game 2, which is their only responsive ban of the entire series. So that sort of tells you how confident they were in their bans. Unlike Infinity Esports, who suddenly banned Aatrox and Maokai, who they hadn't banned at any point previously in the series, who had been very proactive and very effective for R7 both times where they picked the combo, and they picked Maokai in every game in the series so far, and he had a lot of success. And then they also pick up the Poppy ban again, which they had banned since they played it in the first game, not wanting to see R7 take it off of their hands. They then, this game, because of those bans though, it opens up a lot of different powerful picks for R7, and that allows them to get a very, very good draft here. So what happens in this draft is Infinity lock in the Xayah pick first. Xayah has a decent priority in this league. Most of the ADCs are very good on it anyway, and it does sort of open you up to a certain sort of comp, but that's kind of fine. So then Rainbow 7 respond with 2 power picks. You've got the Kai'Sa, traditionally an ADC, but doesn't have to be, especially in this current meta. She can still a very good mid laner. And then they then they pick the Rel, one of the strongest characters in the game right now. Very good support, but also can play jungle at a very high level. And so it's either a very good response into Infinity, or it's 2 good flex picks, and you don't know that is Infinity yet unless you assume. So Infinity then pick Rakan. So now Rainbow 7 know that they're quite happy putting this in the bot lane because they're happy into Xayah Rakan. In my opinion, it's probably about a good lane into Xayah Rakan as well. And so it sort of shows that they've worked out. And then they've got a very strong comp based around just these 2 picks early on. And then on top of that, because Infinity are 2-1 down, it's quite common for teams that aren't confident to pick comfort picks, which I don't have an issue with entirely. I think there are 2 options when you're playing a stronger team, which Rainbow 7 are in this situation, especially when you're 2-1 down or facing match point, especially against a stronger team. You either pick comfort picks, which is what Infinity go with, or you pick really out there things that you haven't really practiced, play everything in your strategy book, and just throw it at the wall and see what happens. I prefer the latter way because I think it's more interesting. I think it also has a higher chance of working if the other team is better than you. And also I think it's just cooler to do that. Anyway, because of this choice from Infinity, the win con for Rainbow 7 is a little bit more complicated than it has been in the other games. And this is because they basically just have a monopoly on the power picks. They can play a more standard back to front if they have the ability to do that, or as they have the Kai'Sa, they can just dive in on the back and be backline and do a load of damage. For Infinity, it's 100% about peeling. You've got the Rakan's effective peeling, you've got the Xayah, who's a very effective peeling ADC because of her ult giving her such survivability. You've got the Ahri, who's very good at peeling. You've got the Rumble, whose ult makes him decent at peeling. And then you've got the Vi, who's also not bad at peeling. But on the other side, because of the other side's picks, it's very problematic if Infinity lose even one person, because Viego gets his reset, and then because of the willingness to go in of the R7 comp, like the comp just want to go in, your whole team gives up 1 death, and it could just be over. The fight could just be over for you because the team's just going to go in, they're going to get their resets, they're going to suddenly do a lot of damage, and that's basically the whole idea. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to let me know, or please do let me know, rather, in the comments or by leaving a like. If you want to see more of this, also let me know. Join me for the live view tonight, starting at 11 again, with the 2nd and 3rd seed of this region taking each other on for the opportunity to play Rainbow 7 in the next round. That could be a very exciting series as well. This one was a relatively exciting series. I expect more fireworks from that game, as it should be a closer game between the 2nd and 3rd seed, as I said. So yeah, hopefully look forward to that one. I hope to do some more like educational streams or videos as well, so hopefully keep an eye out for those. And then we'll see what happens with the channel. The football channel should be starting up soon as well. This is all just a hobby, so I don't really care about anything in terms of views or anything like that. I care much more about your feedback and in creating a community which I can have fun with. So See you in the next one. Have a good day.